How did a 19-year-old carpet cleaner grow into a top 1% app developer with millions of users? I want to know, don't you? Come join me and let's find out. It's startup story time. Welcome, viewers, and thank you for tuning into another episode of Startup Story Time. I'm your host, Ande Lyons, your startup mentor, and I'm here to help you maximize the joy and minimize the heartaches from your startup journey through interviews with startup founders from all industries and walks of life, along with my own hands-on experience from launching, branding, and building 4 businesses. I know you'll find solutions and insights that will help ease your startup journey. So we have a sensational startup founder with us today. Please meet Chino Lex. Hey, Chino.
How are you?
Good. I'm so happy you're here. Chino and I met through Nick Hughes. He is the founder of Founders Live. So go check out the Founders Live platform and Nick Hughes and his journey. We'll have him on someday. But today we're here to talk about Chino. I'm going to read a little bit about his bio while you get to look at his sensational self, okay? Chino Lex is a serial entrepreneur and startup advisor on a mission to change today's perception of millennial consumer behavior. Currently, Chino is the founder and CEO of Keyring, the cable bundle of the subscription generation. I can't wait for you to hear about this business. With his savings from the carpet cleaning job at the young age of 19, Chino decided to leave college one day after freshman orientation. To start and bootstrap his first company. What was he thinking? Chino also advises early stage companies on growth, product direction, and strategy. And he's been featured in Forbes, HubPost, Inc. Magazine, Yahoo, Finance, Thrive Global, Acers Global's Mark Your Mark campaign, and more. Welcome to Startup Story Time, Chino.
I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so thrilled to have you here. And I want you to just dive right in and tell folks, what were you thinking? And gosh, do you have parents? Were they like, I want to hear how they felt about you after freshman orientation going, nope, not doing that.
Yeah. So they were surprised. I'm going to spoil the story. They were surprisingly supportive. I mean, I think we've all heard the narrative of like strict Asian parents. And my sister's a dentist. So they got to vent out all that strictness and type A on her. And I got the middle child of freedom, so to speak. So they always kind of knew that I wasn't really meant for college. Like the signals were pretty apparent. I took college classes in high school and college through this program called Running Start. So I got to get classes done in high school at the college level because I knew I just wanted to get on with my life. And then when real university came around, when the University of Washington came around, and it was time to go to school, I had deferred the admission to the winter because I was putting it off as much as I could. And when I finally got the student loans and when I finally decided when the time came to go to college, I went to orientation, and on the way there from Spokane, Washington, which borders Idaho, it's like 4.5 hours east of Seattle, I was driving through this snow pass, and I totaled my car.
What?
Like on the way to.
Wow, that's a sign.
I totaled my car, stuck in a ditch. It was literally in a ditch. And I mean, half the decision to not go to college was pragmatic with the college credits, and I'd have to pay for it myself. And the other half was like gut. I always knew like it wasn't for me. I couldn't drink that much. I didn't like the notion of learning something and then using it 4 years later. And then I crashed my car on the way to college. I was like, okay, those are a few signs. Has to mean something. And throughout orientation, I was just thinking about how, this really isn't for me. But the problem is I had gotten a big loan for college, and so they had deposited the money. And so I was like, well, are they going to charge me interest on this? Can I return this? And so I was stressing out. And after a few phone calls, they decided to reverse the loan. Thank God. And I went home and I was like, I want to make apps. And my dad was like, that makes sense. And that was it.
Are you serious?
That was it. It could have been way worse. But the fear of him saying, what do you mean? Was so high. But then later he then was like, what are you doing when I stay up till 3 to 4 a.m. talking to my developers like overseas? I think he thought I was like playing video games or surfing online.
Not that there's anything wrong with playing video games if you're a gamer. But see, this is such a great story about college. Becoming a dentist, an attorney, an accountant, something that's very either trade specific or expert specific. Yes, of course, you have to go and get that degree. But if
Yep.
you don't know what you're going to do, why would you ever go into debt? And if you had something that was calling you, get the job, work with a startup, work with a great company, or do what you did, develop an app and learn from that experience. So
Yeah.
how did you find your developers? I mean, you're 19. Where was your exposure to go, hey, I need a developer and I've got this app idea. How did you get there?
So I think it's really interesting that I even wanted to do that. So Spokane, Washington, for people who don't know, it's like this little city that borders Idaho. No one I knew how to code. I didn't know what a VC was until many years later. Didn't know what raising money was. All I knew was I wanted to start a company. And so this all started when I saw an article on Yahoo News that had a clickbaity title, and I fell for it. It was one day after my carpet cleaning job, like a 14-hour day. I was scrolling through Yahoo News when people still used it, and the clickbaity title was 18-year-old makes 6 figures on apps. And so I click it, I fell for it. And I was reading through the article, and after the article, my prevailing thought was, well, if this kid could do it, I could do it.
Love that. That's the entrepreneurial spirit, everybody, right?
Yeah, I'm like, well, he has internet. I have internet. Like, he's around my age. And so I reached out on Twitter, and I tweeted him, and we exchanged emails because I was looking for help, had some app ideas, and then I emailed him saying, I'm on the fence about college, and told him the situation. And he was really like he pushed me over the edge or pushed me over the cliff. I was inspired by him because he had foregone college. He's from Princeton, New Jersey, and where everyone pretty much wants to go to Princeton or like that.
It's the Northeast. That's where I live. We're all about the pedigree degrees.
The pedigree, yeah. It's like here they say on the West Coast, they say, what do you do? On the East Coast, they go, where do you go to school? And so I was really inspired by the fact that he decided to forego college for this whole app business. And he kind of helped me like learn the ropes, and he showed me how to get developers. To answer your question,
wait a minute. How old was he at this time? I mean, you reached out to him on Twitter.
Yeah, we were like 6 months apart. Our birthdays are 6 months apart.
Oh my gosh, I love this something fierce.
And like one of my themes of my life has always been shoot your shot. I'm an asker, not a guesser. Have you heard of that concept?
Share.
So in life, I got this concept from this book called Unsubscribe. I forgot who the author was. But the premise is mostly around email, and it goes deeper because you can unsubscribe from a lot of things in life.
Mm-hmm.
And the author goes to say there are askers and guessers, and I'll spoil it for you. It's an asker's world, meaning, and the difference is most people who are guessers, they kind of like self-reject before they even get to the ask. And if you just get past that little moment of tightness in your chest and ask what you want, it's better than never asking at all.
Absolutely. Well, we all know that the answer is always no, unless you ask. A. B, finding out the solution to a problem. My favorite first few words are, oh, would you be willing?
Yeah.
Would you be willing to help answer?
I made this up, but I like it, so feel free to use it. But I just think about getting off the ski lift. And getting off the ski lift, there's always that flat part. And that's like where guessers stop. But if you say those words that get your skis over the tip of the hill, and you go, would you be willing to? And then you're already in the question. And so, yeah, I shot my shot with Spencer, and he was lucky enough to reach out. I was lucky enough for him to reach back out because we were at the same spot in life. Well, he was a little further, and he helped me out, and he helped me find this site called Elance, which now is called Upwork. Odesk and Elance is the same thing. They let you find freelancers abroad, and I was able to find engineering talent for As much money as my carpet cleaning job paid me in the UR. So I got to like leverage the currency. And that was a concept I've never heard about, especially not in Spokane, Washington.
Right. Oh, that's such a great story. And so you found your developers and you developed this app. And how did you figure out your value proposition? And everybody knows I'm always asking this question because I can't tell founders enough how important this is for figuring out your business model. And even when customers will say, oh yes, I fill out the survey, I'm going to do this when you launch, they still rarely are going to do what you tell them. So how did you figure out who was going to download this app? Because you've got millions of downloads?
Yeah, it was around 5 or over 5. But to preface, I tend to think that markets operate in what I call structure and abstraction. Structures are science, ones and zeros, very logic. Abstraction art, things that make things special. And my first like 20 apps or whatever were all art, all love. This is going to change the world. I love this. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just think it comes second. And what I realized is that no matter how many apps I made, you have to give the market something that it's willing to accept. And the market is willing to accept something that fits into it. And that's the structure. So I only realized this in hindsight, but when I changed the model of what we were doing to make apps behind high popularity, low competition niches on the App Store around like a certain subject or niche, like that's when we started seeing success. And in hindsight, I'm realizing, I should have started with the structure. For example, chairs. There's an Eames chair, which is like $5,000, and an IKEA chair. Both win. However, we know the shape and size, the shape of a chair and structure of a chair. And so relating it back to the value propositions and product market fit, when we started seeing success, I started using that pattern of what apps can we make in these in these niches that have high popularity, low competition, and then we started pumping those out. We ended up making about 160 apps, and about a third of them got to the top charts in their category on the App Store. So on the App Store, there's like the Hot 100 for like music, but it's just segmented into different categories: reference, games, weather, news, etc.
And what were your categories?
Reference. We really like dominated the reference category. And what I learned from that whole experience in terms of value propositions and product market fit, again, is you've got to make something that the market understands is a chair. And then you can go into the details, the kind of wood, how big you want it, the materials. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. You've got the product or the service. You get very clear about who wants it, why they want it. Yeah. And then that's when you add your awesome sauce.
Yeah, I think the prevailing thought of today's culture, society is like, do what you love. And I think the way to qualify that is by thinking about that in a way of do what you love second. Like give the market what they love first, and then add your, again, awesome sauce.
Yeah, what you love, your vibe, whatever it is that you bring that's so special and unique that differentiates you from all the other chairs or apps that are out there.
And across domain too. This is not a new precedent. So for example, in music, there are only 12 little notes in an octave, and you can look at that however you want to. But then the way Rihanna sings it is the way different than how Adele sounds. Same notes, same keys and tones, but different voices
and different appeal. So I just love, some of us want to listen to Leonard Cohen, others want to listen to some great rapper. It's just what your preference is. I love that analogy, Chino, a lot. And so what does that business model look like for apps? I'm always trying to understand, because it sounds like back in the day when we created a software, you did it once and you were done and you just had to market it. What was it like for you?
What's different for my apps and apps today? So like the apps that we made, they were paid downloads. And back then people actually paid for apps. Now people want free apps and usually can't upgrade. And also the business model was also free downloads with ads, and it was ad supported. So it was a mix of both. But today, the prevailing thought is that everything should be a subscription.
Perfect. So people are paying $9 a month or whatever for an app.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Depending on.
And how many people do you have to have on board working with you when you have an app?
Depends on the app. The biggest team I was ever working with was about 12 people. The smallest was one, me and the other developer. So I guess it really depends on what you're making.
Yeah, so I'm trying to understand, the expense structure,
Oh, okay.
how, how someone is going to support that, because I can see apps being bootstrapped
They can't.
more often than having to fundraise. And so that, leads into my next question is, where are you regarding bootstrapping versus angel versus VC?
Yeah, I can answer that in two parts. So in terms of the cost structure for mobile apps, depending on where you get the app developed, for example, Eastern Europe, or I only recommend Eastern Europe because they have the highest quality. So it might be anywhere from $15 to $25 an hour compared to 75 to 150 in the US. And the culture there I like a lot because it's just very straightforward. It's less collaborative than you might like in the US, but if you know exactly what you want.
So you're talking Croatia, that part of Eastern Europe, where are you talking about?
Croatia, Belarus, Romania, Ukraine, like those regions. Very talented, and relatively inexpensive. And in terms of bootstrapping versus angel versus VC, with the current business I'm working on now, which we can get into in a second, if it's a business that can scale worldwide, where it has worldwide application, like VC could work for you. But it's mostly about the market you're in. So if what's the market for, I don't know, something niche, like you can bootstrap that or get angel money for that and get it developed and start to market it and grow it and build a business.
Yeah, but if you've created the next new DNA-based cancer cure, you're gonna.
Yeah, so you can affect a large market or create a large market. I think that VC is a good fit for you, and it's a good fit for us right now. But if you just want to make something, make money from it, have a lifestyle business, and raise some angel money from friends and family, or bootstrap it yourself, and you'll probably do okay. I think it's easy to read tech news and say, oh, well, they raised a bunch of money. Maybe we might need to raise money, but that's not always true. So I think it's a matter of taking a good hard look at what you have and thinking it through and deciding.
And so are your apps, those apps that you started and tested with and got better and better at, are they still around? I mean, how did you transition into Keychain?
So
Keyring, I mean.
Yeah, that's right. No, it's an easy distinction, or easy to mix up. So we sold the portfolio in the late 2016, and in 2017 I worked on like 8 to 10 different products. I started to think about what I wanted to work on for the next like 10 years, because I'm a fiend for interviews. Like all the interviews from CEOs I look up to or business leaders, they started the thing that they're working on now, like from 23 to 27, like in that window. And I found that range, and I decided, like, I'm gonna make all these products and see what I actually want to work on for a long period of time. And so what consumed my attention and what I'm working on now, Keyring, was that thing I thought about every day, and that I think about every day now. And so it's not an app. We'll go mobile in about 2 iterations or 3 iterations. But yeah, those apps I'm not really sure where they're at anymore, to be honest.
So, and how did Keyring come about? Because, sorry for calling it keychain, but that's because the visual that's on the website makes my heart pitter patter. I have so much guilt around the fact that I will get a great $5 off coupon from CVS or $5 on a purchase of more than $50 at Stop and Shop. Do I ever remember to have any of them with me? Never. And I always feel guilty. I don't like leaving money on the table.
That's right. So it's joinkeyring.com. There is a Keyring that's like a coupon site. That's a bit different. However, so how I thought about Keyring was I looked at all my friends and my girlfriend at the time. And I started to realize that a lot of millennials and Gen Z, we share the passwords to these streaming accounts: Netflix, New York Times, Hulu, HBO, whatever. And so most people, 60% of people have 2 to 6 services in the US. Now, Deloitte says that it will be about 10 to 12 services by 2020, and the 4 largest ones haven't even launched yet. So if you think about this with young people, how they're going to get their content, undisputable, through these services. However, for people who have multiple services, multiple password sharing happens usually manually, like people text it around or email it around, and managing the payments between all these subscriptions can be a pain because most people split them. So without Keyring, people they Venmo request their friends or their roommates for $3 to $5 a month, depending on the services. And so what Keyring aims to do for these people with multiple media subscriptions is simplify the whole process. So what Keyring does is it lets family members and household members, aka roommates, bundle their media services together, split them equally every month, and then share access without sharing the account or without sharing the password. Kind of like a cable bundle, but again for the subscription generation. And we make the bundle custom to the household, because some households don't like sports, so they won't have sports ESPN Plus in their household. And it also eliminates duplicates in the household. If I move into a new house and there are 4 guys, and 3 of us have Netflix, why would we all individually have our own accounts? It just doesn't make sense.
No.
And what's great about households these days is they're so fluid. People aren't staying at jobs. Millennials and Gen Z aren't buying houses anytime soon. And there's this wave of co-living that I'm really excited about. And that all makes the perfect storm for this flexible household. And they'll need like flexible subscriptions as well.
Yeah, I'm a mom of a millennial and a Z. So
Yeah.
I really understand how they think, how they move through the world. And you're absolutely right about the fluidity. It's not, and also the trajectory. It
Yeah.
used to be how at 18, you did this, that, whatever. Now it's, hey, it's a free fall, and everybody is flexible, and it's all okay. And by the way, who could buy a house nowadays? I'm just saying.
Yeah, and look, this precedent is not new. Fortunately for us, like we can look back at history, and that's indisputable. Do you remember LimeWire and Napster back in the day, like 2002, 2000?
Oh yeah, I know the co-founder of Napster. He lives down the road.
Awesome. And so look, they perpetuated or created this behavior of content downloading online. Unfortunately, it was illegal and illicit. However, the behavior was there, and in media and consumer products, the crowds win. You can't fight the crowds. And unfortunately, that world at the time thought it was a threat, and they sued customers. They shut down Napster. They shut down They fought what people actually wanted and what they're actually already doing. And then Apple came along and said, "Wait, let's look at this problem space, and let's legitimize it."
Yep, let's honor the artist. Let's honor the customer.
Right. And there are games that are positive sum games where everyone wins, and they created iTunes and everyone won, and that was the impetus for Spotify, and then content streaming with Netflix and these other services, and so the seed there was all legitimized, and that's what we're doing with these services. You can share within the household, and luckily for us, we're in a time where the household's fluid. And if you look at it from different angles, the economic reasons of splitting services and combining them just make sense. The social aspect of account sharing is prevalent. Like if I'm dating a girl and we're getting serious, I'll give her my Hulu password. If you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I love it.
Even with breakups too, it's like a part of the breakup process. It's a part of culture now, right? It's a beautiful thing, and the technology's never been better. We're in a time where we can actually track from password share to conversion what's happening. In Napster times, you can never track from illegal download to CD purchase, and so the business models didn't align. now the tech and the business model aligns. We're trying to bring these services new subscribers, net new subscribers, and we'll do that by getting the subscribers into the household bundle at like a split price point instead of like the full price point.
Love it. What stage is the business at right now?
Oh, we are so close to launching. We were supposed to launch 4 days ago. However, there's production issues like with software. It's kind of like it's like the 90% of development is kind of a walk in the park, and that last 10% and the edge cases you didn't think about really show you how thought through these things need to be.
And this is a perfect segue into one of my favorite questions, which is how do you manage those problems? I mean, so often problems and these kind of hiccups, disasters, whatever you want to call them, obstacles in a business can be like this to a founder. It just puts a chokehold on the business. What and how do what techniques do you use to somehow worm your way, squirrel your way, dissolve the obstacle? What works best for you, your brain, your nature?
Directly, well, to preface, so the hard thing about hard things by Ben Horowitz is like the startup Bible. And he's absolutely right that I think he said 80 or 90% of entrepreneurship is managing your own psychology. And when these problems happen, it doesn't feel good, and you don't think about good things. But what I realized is when those bad feelings or hard times come, if you just focus on the problem, then things usually get better. For example, this is an insight from my good friend Adam Robinson. He's like, when Michael Jordan would talk about making baskets, he would never stress about missing baskets because he was focusing on the task at hand. That's really, I think it's beautiful, because if we just focus on the task at hand, which now for us is launching, growing, retaining users, and subscribers. If I just focus on that, I'll get over like a missed product launch that puts us back 10 days. And that usually happens with a lot of things.
Right. There's a great book out called The Obstacle is the Way.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah, it's a great one too. Just really understanding. You've got to stay curious. And what you just said, you've got to stay focused on the problem. And I interviewed recently Ethan Anthony from Crankchart. And he is all about that behavioral psychology and machine learning. And he's all about the problem and like just being with the problem, becoming one with the problem.
That's a good way to look at it. I would
in a healthy way, not where you get paralyzed. And, that staying curious is also really important. So how can viewers and listeners, because I'll be using this on my podcast as well, support you and your future launch? I mean, by the time this actually gets uploaded, my fingers are crossed that you're already launched.
That's right. So you can go to producthunt.com and search Keyring on the upcoming product section. We have about 400 people on the waiting list right now, and giving early access to the first 200 people who.
I'm going to get right on Product Hunt when I get off. I had no idea. Yay!
That's right. Well, I think it's really important to talk about building teams, because a lot of investors like to say we invest in teams and markets and ideas.
Right.
Ideas, maybe that's true. Markets, that's probably more true. And teams is absolutely true every time. And so what I realized is that in terms of recruiting people to come with you and to actually spend time, their valuable time on what you're doing, it really revolves around whether you believe in it or not, and building a dynamic within a team that's fun, and then where they can see other smart people are going to. And the challenge is for startups and small companies is that recruiting is so hard. Like every developer who's worth anything has 3 or 4 recruiters in their inbox every day. And so what I like to start with is, do you believe in what you're doing, and have you sold yourself on it? Because what we do as humans is we're pretty good at smelling out BS. And what's really great is that when you talk about what you're doing and someone even gets like a whiff of not BS, but that you kind of don't buy it, and that you're waiting for them to buy it to validate it so that you buy it. Like we know this. Maybe we might not have words for it. We can see it. And so the thing that I've learned the most in probably the past 6 to 8 months has to be enthusiasm. And again, with enthusiasm, you got to believe in what you're doing to be enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, the why has to be so big inside you that people around you are magnetized to that sense of purpose, because at the end of the day, it's never about the salary for an employee or a team member. It is about being energized and feeling on purpose and being part of something bigger, right?
Yeah, I'm starting to realize that a lot of my friends that they work at big companies, and there are a lot of people at big companies that are just bored, bogged down by the process, and you can be that outlet where they work on your startup maybe 2 hours, 3 hours a day, or 15 to 20 hours a week if they're up for that, 10 to 20 hours a week if they're up for that, or they take their PTO for 2 weeks and invest like 5 days of that into working on your startup. And all that starts with the story that you tell them and the story that you tell yourself that you believe. And after you tell yourself that story and you believe it, you tell them the story in this enthusiastic way. And then a lot of them go, how can I get involved? And then you say, well, good, because I think you're the right fit, and that's the reason why I'm talking to you. And then you start them off on something small, a small project. You get their feet wet.
And is it that would be a side hustle for them, Chino?
Yeah, you kind of frame it as like, look, we're looking for full-time people. Obviously, we're a startup. We haven't raised a giant round yet. So this is kind of like a trial for both of us. And it'll be pretty clear if this will work in the next 2-3 weeks. And what's great about that is after you attract one person who's really good and they do well after the trial and they do well after, and they're shipping and there's good rapport there, they usually know 3 or 4 people who are just as good or better, and they attract those people too. And like, if you build a team in the first, so the team right now is 6 people, and all part-time, I'm full-time, which is fine. And they look at each other like, who else is on here? Because if it's a bunch of Joe Schmoes or a bunch of chumps, then they don't want to be on the team. That's why everyone wanted to get traded to Golden State, because you have Kevin Durant, you have Steph Curry. They want to be on that winning team. And so if you can start with the story that you believe in, communicate with enthusiasm, and talk about the technicalities of, this is where we'll be in the next couple months, this is who else you're working with, this is where I think you can fit into this, let me know if this works for you. I get started in after the ask in 3-4 days.
And what's brilliant about what you're sharing, Chino, is you're sharing the right language and vocabulary to use in sharing your enthusiasm. And I'm just going to put in a little shameless plug of my own right now. This is why you need a mentor, startup founders, is because while you're projecting and really believing in that level of confidence and in your story and your ability to execute and bring these talented people on board and do it, you need a sounding board. You need someone to turn to going, because as much as even Chino looks completely confident in what he's doing, what he's talking about, that's it right now in the moment. He is sharing his purpose and his passion and his business model. That's what we do as founders. But when everybody's left the room, you've got to deal with your doubt. And there is always doubt. That's never going to go away. And that's why having a mentor or an advisor or someone in your sphere that you can turn to and say, okay, I know I just told everybody this is great and it's going to happen, but oh my gosh, I don't know. What are your thoughts about that, Chino?
I have like a personal advisory board. There are people in my life who embody something I want, and they are what I want. Like the being of them is what I want. So I have people who are really nice, people who are really patient, people who make really great decisions. And I kind of informally, I just reach out to them and say, this is what's happening. What would you do? Or how would you think about this? Not what would you do? Because usually you can get better answers that way. But in terms of mentoring, advising, coaching, I do advising on product and growth usually. But I'm starting to realize there may be a sister to advising, which could be like coaching perhaps. And so I just got this book called $1 Trillion Coach. It's the guy's called Bill Campbell. He was a football coach, I believe, and he was the liaison, like the coach for executives at Google, Apple.
It's a terrific read. I'll have the link in the show notes.
Yeah, and so I'm starting to find the value of that sounding board. Whether it be, I mean, so there are different words for it, right? Advisor, mentor, a little different.
Here's what I learned with my 4 businesses.
Yeah.
I always had the answer inside me, Chino.
Yeah.
But if I didn't have the chance to articulate the problem, what I was thinking about, chewing on it out loud, I mean, getting it out and out of my head and out.
Yeah.
A lot of times the person would be like, uh-huh,
Mm-hmm.
uh-huh, uh-huh. And I'd be like, that's okay, I got it, thank you. And they're like, no problem.
That's right. And so I guess my personal advisory board is just my friends who are also founders and who embody those character traits that I wish I had.
Yeah.
And then, I think it was probably 6 months ago, I started seeing a therapist, and I view him as kind of a coach too, like giving me clarity on the decisions I'm making. But he does this all day. He knows how the mind works, and you got to have someone like that.
Yeah, there's only one of you.
Yeah.
Okay, you are unique, and self-awareness, we hear Gary Vee talking about this all the time, and many of the folks online, self-awareness is key. You can't be looking at somebody else and wondering how they were going to manage and deal with this. It's you. And so once you know how your beautiful brain works and your nature and everything, you can better prepare and handle whatever comes across your plate. Yeah.
That's right. And it's kind of like in chess. When I used to play chess, it's always easy to see the moves when you're above the board. And a lot of the times when you're lost in the sauce, especially with managing the team and everything else you're doing.
Right.
It's hard to see the moves when you're in front of the board all day.
Thank you so much, by the way, for keeping me on track today and making sure that we hit on the topic that we were very excited about when we were planning our conversation together, which is how do you attract great talent when you don't have the funds for a Google type salary, a Google level salary. I think that's so important. I'm in a landscape here in Boston, in the startup landscape. There are folks who are willing, just like back in the .com, when I had a .com, people were leaving their big paying jobs. I just want to be part of the wave. I want to be part of the purpose.
That's right. I mean, and for early stage, startup teammates, you give them nice equity, and it's kind of great because have you read the book Drive by Daniel Pink?
Absolutely.
So, for the listeners and viewers who haven't heard of it, it talks about motivations. And the premise is that there are intrinsic motivations and extrinsic. Remember this. Yeah. Extrinsic are the most obvious ones. Salary, title, status, all these things that you can kind of count or
labels.
Sure. And then intrinsic is love, camaraderie, curiosity.
Appreciation. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all that stuff. And what's great about equity incentives is that it's literally the only way to, if you're only offering equity, they only think that this is worth their time because it'll work out. And so if you can't give them the external stuff, you're starting with the internal intrinsic motivations. And in the book, they talked about how intrinsic motivations are the most sustainable. People perform the best. And so it's like process of elimination. And it's a gift for startups. You can't give them the big salaries. What we can give them is a piece of something that you believe can be something. And look, sometimes it doesn't work out. And I tell them, I'm very open with all of them. I'm like, look, you've seen the numbers. A lot of these things don't work out. But I'm trying to figure out different ways I can help you either learn a skill you wanted to learn, connect with an executive in the industry or anywhere else that you really want to get to know and learn from, and be with a team who really improves each other. And so these are all things that you can always slap money on later.
Right. And that, the level of camaraderie too. I mean, you see it in our troops when they come home, a lot of them when they're going through the challenges after having been with in a life and death situation where people always had your back, that level of teams being united on a common goal like that, you can't buy that. You really can't, that kind of experience.
Yeah, it's cool seeing. So we're remote. I mean, 3 of us are in LA, 4 of us are in LA. Sorry, but we're in different parts of LA, like Glendale, North Hollywood, Santa Monica. So it's pretty much it's like an hour and a half to get to each other. So we have to be mostly remote. And it's really cool to see the collaboration via Slack or via Asana, where it's tasks getting reassigned and commented on and liked, and it's like this collaboration that you're seeing before your eyes. That's really cool to see. And a friend of mine, he was a CEO of this company called Reach Now in Seattle. He was talking about not the beer test, the row 4B test, which is, people like to say that the beer test is people saying that you should be able to have a beer with your teammates. He's like, no, that's BS. You got to be able to sit on a plane and you're in 4B, and in 4A there's your right hand man, left hand man, and 4C there's a right hand woman. Do you want to be strapped into that plane with these people on a 15-hour flight? And if the flight's crashing, would you want to have them next to you? And you got to think that intensely, because a lot of the times things go wrong, and you got to have people you can count on. And
absolutely, it's a sink or swim. I mean, you've got to have people who really are in it, not just to win it, but in it for that high level of journey. I mean, I'm always saying that entrepreneurship, a startup journey, is the best personal development program out there. You learn so much about yourself, but also with the people that you're with. And I think that's a great barometer check for people in the startup company, is their ability to remain fluid, because just because you're going this way one minute does not mean you're going to be staying in that direction.
Mm-hmm. And I started to think about another litmus test for teammates, and also with friends and people in my life. Like, would I want 20 of this person around? Like, if I could walk into a house and there's 20 of this person, would I walk into the house? And because the reality is people like to attract people who are kind of like them. And I like people who are positive and friendly and competent. And that's a great trifecta for me. And usually it works out, because the other people that they attract are also the same way. And it makes for a good little community.
Yeah, it's a value-driven group versus, personality. Everybody's personality is different. I mean, you want fulfillment, you want everybody in their different categories of what they're brilliant at. And it's not what you're brilliant at, but your values are the same. Your willingness to hustle, your willingness to, in spite of the fear that you're feeling or whatever might be going on in your life, you're willing to slog your way through and open up, and also be vulnerable with everybody else that you're working with. And that is not what you're going to find in a traditional office.
I wouldn't know, but I'm sure that's how it's like.
Listen, I've been unemployable since 1992, Chino. Okay. So when I earned my MBA, I went into banking, commercial lending, not because I was a fit. I'm a risk taker, but because I wanted to learn, how do bankers think? And I wanted to do the financial analysis on all types of businesses and industries. And that was one of the best ways. But boy, did I push a lot of people's buttons. It was not a good fit. And I got out of there as soon as possible. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your startup story and your insights, and especially on how to attract talent when you don't have payroll. Or benefits, or any of those things that really tend to mean so much to folks. But again, you listen to the folks in these books and online, folks that are sharing their stories. There's so many unhappy, quote, successful people who are driving great cars, living in great homes, are in wonderful jobs that we think would be great, and they're miserable, and they'd much rather be doing something that made their heart sing, or be part of a team that had a great symphony happening with their sound.
That's right. And you can always have both too. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, people who,
if you're happy, though,
that's all that matters.
Yeah. I mean, happiness isn't every day, because many of us have read The Subtle Art of Not Giving a And, you know, he really hones in on that, which is, yeah, some days you're going to wake up and it's just not going to be a great day, but that's okay.
Yeah, we're human.
We're home. We're human. We're making it happen. Okay. So I just, again, thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to have all the links, folks, where you can find Chino, Keyring, the books that we talked about, and let's all stay connected. It takes a village to raise a startup. That's why I'm doing these startup stories, so that you can hear that, you know, what Chino has had to struggle with. Launch day was scheduled 4 days ago. You can hear all these great stories so that you know that you're not alone. It's the part of the journey that we all are working our way through, the murky waters we're trying to navigate, and we can learn from each other. So please share your comments, your thoughts. If you have a burning question, leave it in the comments below. Chino and I would be happy to get back to you. Hop on to andelyons.com if you're looking for some coaching, mentoring, some of my DIY products. Those of you who are tuning in via YouTube, please hit that subscriber button and the little bell so you know every time I've uploaded a new video. I'm either doing Andelicious advice or startup story time. Again, Chino Lex, thank you so much for joining me today for this delicious conversation.
Thank you for having me. This is fun.
And viewers, listeners, please remember, you've got this. You really do. Stay strong, stay focused, take Chino's advice, focus in on everything, and you will get through. Cheers. Mwah, mwah, everybody.
Thank you.